There have been a lot of headlines recently about celebrities and businesses moving to Texas. But before all of this publicity, there were already a lot of Californians who had made the move to Texas. There are a lot of similarities between these two states, but there are also some glaring differences. If we look at growth trends and politics, we might be able to project what might happen in the Texas real estate market based on what's already happened in California. The wild card, though, is the differences in the tax policies. And if you stick around for this video, I'll break down the numbers and show you why Texas tax policies are so attractive, and if they remain unchanged, could actually prevent Texas from experiencing some of the negative consequences that California is currently working through. Let's take a quick look at the political history of California. From 1950 to 1990, California was a Republican stronghold. 2 Republican governors went on to become U.S. presidents. And during this time, both the population and the economy of California experienced exponential growth. These 2 factors contributed to a surge in real estate values, first in Southern California, and then in Northern California, with the rise of the technology companies in Silicon Valley. In 1992, for the first time in 30 years, California voted Democrat in the presidential election, and has been a Democratic stronghold ever since. Most historians point to 2 demographic shifts that have contributed to this. The first was the growth of the Hispanic population, who perceived their interests were best served by the Democratic Party. The second was the mass exodus of the middle class, who found themselves priced out of the housing market in California. And it's interesting to note that the largest percentage of Californians who left in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s moved to Texas. Now, it doesn't take very long to see a lot of similarities between California in the 80s and 90s and Texas in the 2000s and 2010s. Remember, these are the 2 largest state economies in the entire United States. If they were independent countries, they would both rank in the top 10 in the world. And since the growth in California happened 30 years prior to this massive growth in Texas, if we study California, we might find some clues as to what might be in store for Texas. And probably more important than that, we might be able to identify some of the things that Texas might do to avoid some of the negative consequences of the growth that California is dealing with now. The first California real estate boom happened in Southern California in the 70s. Unlike current investor strategies, there was no fixing and flipping involved. Without doing anything to change or improve a home, home values skyrocketed in a relatively short period of time. In direct response to this boom, in 1978, California implemented Proposition 13, which was an actual amendment to the California Constitution. The 2 major things that it did was, number 1, limit the amount of property taxes that could be assessed to a home to 1% of the purchased value. And number 2, those property taxes could not be increased more than 2% every year after that. Now, the idea behind this was to protect the homeowners that had been in those neighborhoods for a long period of time. Without Proposition 13, if the value of your home went up 50%, regardless of what the tax rate was, your taxes are going to go up 50% as well. And in neighborhoods where you have high appreciation and there's no cap on how fast those property taxes can go up, even if you have your house completely paid off, at some point those property taxes are going to make it unaffordable to stay in that neighborhood. Is there anybody in Austin who can relate to this? Now, one of the main reasons that California is able to make this system work is that they have a state income tax. Now, there are plenty of opinions on this issue, but I'm going to show you the numbers and break down how this all works. If household income was $200,000, in California you would pay over $15,000 in state income tax, and in Texas you wouldn't pay anything. If your house is valued at $400,000, in California you would pay $4,000 in property taxes, but in Texas you would pay $10,000. This is why Californians complain about the high property taxes in Texas. They either minimize it or don't understand that in California they actually pay more in combined taxes. Let's say the home value increases to $700,000. Over $22,000 in total taxes in California and $17.5 in Texas. If the household income was $100,000 and the property value was $400,000, the total taxes come close. But what does a $400,000 house look like in California? What it usually looks like is income and property values are higher in California, and in most cases, you will pay more in total taxes in California. Now, before I wrap this up, I want to come back to that Proposition 13, because we've reached a point in Texas, especially in Austin, when something like that might begin to seem like it makes sense. Now, first of all, it's highly unlikely that something like that could ever be implemented in Texas because we don't have that state income tax. But there are a lot of progressive thinkers with California ties who are moving here, and they might begin to propose ideas of something similar. The first question I have for you is, what happened in California after Proposition 13? Well, there were two more real estate booms. The second one started in the mid-90s and ran all the way up to the 2008 housing crash. It was in this one that the middle class was completely eliminated from the housing market in California, and they succeeded in creating an economy where you had only very high-income households and very low-income households with very little in between. This is a very difficult concept to accept, but if population growth pushes home values higher, the increase in taxes will force some people to move. Now, the good news is that they would be able to cash in their equity and potentially move somewhere that's more in line with their household income. But if property taxes are kept artificially low and they don't sell, they would be decreasing the number of available homes, which would further inflate the value of the houses that are actually on the market. And of course, this makes it increasingly difficult for those middle-income households to even buy a house. Well, I hope this was helpful. You know, I get emails, texts, and phone calls almost every day for people who are thinking about buying or selling real estate here in the Austin area, and I would love to help you out too. If you like my videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. All of my contact information is in the video description, so don't be shy. Let's make your real estate dreams come true.